Welcome everyone to another episode of Dynamics Corner. What does it take to do all of this, Brad? I'm your co-host, Kris.
And this is Brad. This episode was recorded on January 13th, 2025. Kris. What does it take to do all of this? That is a full question. With us today, we had the opportunity to speak with a guest to learn about that, as well as rules, and what is time for money. And he's also another individual that does all of this and then some. With us today, we had the opportunity to speak with Mark Smith. Good morning, sir. How are you doing?
The man himself.
Good. And yourself?
Excellent. Thank you. Excellent. I really enjoy speaking with podcast participants from your location because you come to us from the future.
That's right. Tell me what lotto numbers, what's your next lotto coming up? I'll tell you the numbers that win.
Exactly. If you would please do so. It's something interesting to think about as well, too, because I think you're 18 hours ahead of us or ahead of me, which...
Yeah.
Is it?
I think he's 18 hours ahead of us. It's morning to him. It's afternoon.
Yeah, it's 8 a.m. in the morning for me on January the 14th.
I see it's January the 13th here.
Wow.
Crazy,
So- Isn't it crazy?
I tell you what, I wish they could update time zone stuff, and get rid of daylight savings all around the world. And I reckon there'd be a new modern way of doing time because, the current time system was based on, I think, the railroad system is why they put this concept of time zones. Had to do with the railroad system way back in the day. I remember reading years ago. And I just think, once again, it's something that we've inherited, like the QWERTY keyboard.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that have been around, and we work with implementations of ERP software, or in the case you work with Power Platform and such, which we'll talk about on top of a few other things. But we always tell everybody, don't just do something because you've always done it. I agree with you. Get rid of daylight savings time. We don't need it.
Yeah.
And I even think we could get rid of time zones because I think we could adapt to what we do at specific times. We go to bed and we wake up. It doesn't need to be... It would be so much easier, and then it would be on the same day, and you wouldn't be in the future.
Yeah, exactly.
And also, Happy New Year.
Same to you.
And we always see Australia starts the new year off because early in the morning for us, it's January 1st.
That's right.
For those in Australia, I've never been to Australia. I have to get over there.
This is a crazy thing is that with the MVP program back when I joined, everybody around the world, out in the Northern Hemisphere, would be waiting for the 1st of January to find out if they had, if you're going to get it for the first time, if you're going to get it. And for me, it was always the 2nd of January I had to wait till, right? It was never on the 1st. It was actually on the 2nd.
You had an extra day wait.
It was weird. Yeah.
That is funny.
It is. Several things I was looking to speak with you about today, and I appreciate your time and taking the time to speak with us, even so from the future. And if anything happens, just let me know so I can prepare as I go to bed tonight for the morning.
Yeah, I'll let you know when the apocalypse goes to happen before it actually does, so you got time to prep.
I got 21 hours.
Yeah, there you go.
He's 21 hours.
Yeah, ahead of me.
Wow,
That's wild.
That is crazy. It's almost a day.
Almost a day.
Is that challenging for you? Because I don't even know. Is it challenging for you? Because I know here in the United States, most of the things we talk about are on Eastern time. If you look at the financial markets, if you look at a lot of operations, how is it for you in Australia or some, anybody within that region? Do you have challenges? Do you always go by, UTC or what do you do to adapt?
The biggest thing is using tools now, right, to mitigate it. But the hardest thing for me, like my company is a UK based company, and we're exactly 12 hours different. So if I'm doing it 11 p.m. my time, it's 11 a.m. in the morning there. But it's, getting that crossover in business hours is difficult many times. And so I've just got used to working, I'll work from anything from midnight through to the early hours of the morning. That's like one shift of my day, and then the next shift is in my daylight hours. So
how does that deal with your sleep?
I function pretty good on 6 hours. If I get 6 hours, I'm good with that. And it works.
You think you're good with it? Read the book Why We Sleep. I read it recently.
Listen, I have an Aura ring, and I do I do monitor a lot, and I'm trying to maintain to get to like 7 hours of sleep, just because I know it's good for my health. But yeah, 8 is definitely excessive.
Oh, it is. It is. I depends on what's going on in my life with the impact on sleep. But there was a period after reading that book, I made some adjustments. Not that the book told me to make any adjustments. The book just explains the physiological effects of sleep and things on sleep. And there were several days that I finally felt refreshed, where I slept I didn't get tired the entire day, which was a great feeling. But you having that staggered shift must be a challenge.
Yeah, it's not all the time, right? It's periodic. It's if I'm on a contract with Microsoft and I'm delivering training, I'll have a 4-hour block from, let's say, 2 a.m. or something like that, depending on daylight saving and time zones and things. But I'm often doing Pacific time in that case in the US.
Pacific time.
Yeah.
That's the 18 hours.
Yeah. It's
21 for him.
Yeah.
That must be crazy with someone who's just close to you, because they would be 23 hours. So they're closer to you geographically, but further from you. See, if you really think about this time zone thing, we do need to do away with it, because...
But like all these things, like, imperial and metric measurements, you got big countries, left and right hand side of the roads. Those things, people will die on their hill of why it needs to be the way it always has been. So
that's wild.
When the U.S. was talking about switching to the metric system many years ago, I think I was young. I was all for it, because it's so much easier to just have... I understand it's so much easier to have one system, but I do also understand why they say, well, we already have so many things in production. Yeah. But that mentality goes back with what I'm saying. Just because you've done something forever doesn't mean you need to do it, and eventually that would fall off.
Yeah.
So anything new would be all in the metric system.
Yeah.
And anything old would eventually either be, a treasure or a valuable souvenir, but it would fall off.
Relic.
But
a relic.
Yeah. A relic.
It's
antique.
If you've watched Silo, it'll be a relic.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a great show, by the way.
Awesome. Next week's the final.
It's a show.
It's like, man.
Which show is that again?
Silo.
It's on Apple.
Silo. I'm looking for a new show to watch.
Rebecca Ferguson.
Silo.
It's such a good show.
Apple.
It's so good, because I've just got back into sci-fi a bit because of AI, and just how what has been sci-fi in the past, has become our reality in so many different ways. And so I love this whole concept, and also like I'm putting myself in, because, the premise is something happened on Earth. They put big boreholes down to the Earth and built these like 150, 200 story down into the Earth little cities that 10,000 people live in. And of course, you're just getting a lens of one silo, not realizing that there's 50 of them.
I'll have to check that out.
You got to check it out, Brad.
I will. I'm looking, as I had mentioned, I'm looking for a new show. I just finished Tulsa King season 2 last night. So I try to watch one show. It's part of my routine to unwind in the evening before I go to bed. So
it
I
is
read
an
a book.
unwinding thing, right? Like if I come off a podcast or a meeting, at between 10 and 11 o'clock at night, because I'm doing time zone in the UK, I will just be, my brain's fizzing, and you need something to settle it,
You do. That's why I do a book and a show before bed. And
I don't know, Silo is one. It's like sometimes you watch movies where like it requires you to think. And it's like, wow, this is fascinating. Silo is one of them. It's like, wow. It could happen.
I'll
Yeah,
check that out.
yeah,
I'll
that's the thing, right? I love any show that's kind of on the brink of reality, and that's why I think I've
Yes.
liked sci-fi again a lot, because in the era of AI that we're living in, you can just see so much more things becoming plausible.
Yes, I agree with you on shows that could be real. I don't
Yeah.
like those far-fetched, Chris runs into a bar, 14,000 men shoot at him with a gun and he never gets hit, but he manages to kill everybody. Those I don't get into, but those that are like plausible, I get so into, because it's
Right
like
in the edge.
that could be real. Like it's believable that it could happen.
My pet peeve in movies is when the protagonist, right, almost gets beaten up to the point of death or whatever, but they're the protagonist, so they're gonna win.
Yeah.
And like in fight scenes and stuff, they almost get their, beaten totally down, and then last minute it's like there's a new wind of strength they have and they come back, right? And you're just like, come on, like,
expected.
And I have those conversations, I say, because if you watched a bar fight doesn't last for 30 minutes. A bar fight typically lasts for a couple hits, and then people are down and out or whatever. The only show that I will say that I liked, and it goes with what you had said, was Game of Thrones. Because Game of Thrones, you could like somebody, you watched them, and they're dead. Like they really did that well, because the protagonist was the protagonist until he was dead.
Yeah.
It's not like 3 seasons later where, he got beat up and shot and he's hanging on, by a limb. That's all
You know
good
what,
fun.
though? The only fight type movies back in the day, Steven Seagal, right?
Oh, yes.
His movies, it never looked like he was going to lose the fight. Right? But you go to a
Steven
James
Seagal.
Bond movie, you go to any of these, they almost look like they're gonna, get taken out, and then they recover. And it's like, the other thing is, some of the hits and fights, you're like, there's no way that person would have come off the ground.
Absolutely correct. And it's the same thing, like
100%.
episode 2 of season 1. We already know there's 3 seasons.
Yeah.
The guy's not dying.
Yeah.
But
Exactly.
But with that, before we jump into the conversation, I could talk about this all afternoon or all morning, or whatever we are today. But before we jump into the conversation, would you mind telling us a little bit about yourself?
Yes. I'm a guy, and
I have a microphone.
21 hours in the future.
yeah. This is the future talking to you. So what do I say about myself? I love tech. I love life. I love the future of possibilities. I love the fact that we're not defined by who we're brought up. You can change things. One of my one phrase I love, and I read it in a book by this Indian author some years ago, was the concept of brules. Which is basically a play on the word rules and the play on the word bullshit, right? Bullshit rules are brules, and that often we're brought up with these rules in our life that are literally your parents, they were trying to control you in a situation, so they made a rule. If you pull a face and the wind changes, your face is going to get stuck like that, right? That's a extreme one. But the thing is that there's so many more subtle ones that you have through life, and the example he gave in the book was, he was brought up in India, a culture, of course, where they don't tend to eat cows or meat. And a McDonald's came to town and he saw the burger, and the big juicy patty in it. And he said to his mum, I'm going to eat that. And she's like, well, you can't because religious reasons, blah, blah, blah. He was like, yeah, it was a bullshit rule. It was a brule. So he goes, he went and ate it. It was the best decision of his life. Totally loved it, And the thing is that there's so many subtle ones of those that condition us, though, in life. And so, in the area of tech, Satya, I just watched an hour and a half long podcast of him yesterday that he just recently did, and he goes back to that whole how he moved Microsoft by Carol Dweck's book Mindsets, Fixed in an Open Mindset. And I just think that you can really be, and of course if the folks are gonna that have a mindset to go, no, you can't, you can do and be whatever you want in this tech space. that you want. If you want it, like, it is possible. I just love the like unlimited nature of things. So I know that's a weird way of describing who I am, but it kind of gives you a feel of how I think. And yeah,
No, I appreciate that. I really
Yeah.
appreciate that. Something else that you do is you do podcasts.
yeah, yeah. And I just launched it. Well, I haven't launched it. I've just recorded my first episode of a total new podcast tail end of last week. So I've been podcasting for 8 years now. I think today I just published 41st episode.
641 episodes in 8
Yeah.
years. That's
That's
pretty
amazing.
good.
So
And
few.
that is amazing. And I see so many podcasts popping up, and
Yeah.
podcasts are becoming more popular as
Mhm.
far as listenership is concerned, because
Yeah.
to me, they're easy. I listen to a lot of them
Mhm.
because you hear information from other people, right? It's no
Yeah.
longer just somebody that has a big corporation or a lot of financing, because now you get a microphone, they have many services available for you to publish it rather inexpensive. And you can put information out. There's a lot of good content available, and I like it.
There's a rawness to it as well. Like, even watching this video of Sachi the other day, which was a video podcast, is how it was done. He had 2 interviewers, and I feel you get an insight into somebody that can't be fully curated, right? They
Yes.
asked him questions, and you could see he would pause. He had to think about how he was going to respond. You could see in some situations he had to play very tactfully, because he doesn't want to release NDA stuff that's coming,
Right.
you know. And then there's the whole, you could see him darting around legal ramifications of how he could answer, right? And so it was interesting to see that the choreography, if you like, of the conversation. And then also the interviewer knowing when they had exhausted a line of questioning, that no matter how much they pressed it, he wasn't going any further. And to be able to read that nuance. And I suppose this is the way I look at it, because last week I did 3 days of my podcast recording, and I record in 3 days a month. That's when I do my recordings. So I did 3 days, about 8 podcasts a day last week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So, and the thing is, here I am, my 8th year of doing it, and it could get tired, yet that week was the most invigorating week to me ever, because I just feel like you keep going to a new level of, I so want to connect with this guest that I've got on and really go, I suppose what I've come is super, super curious about other people's lenses on whatever, as in their view, what I mean by lenses on the world. And everybody has something to contribute, and the way they look at it can totally change the way I look at it. And so it's becoming, I was saying to my wife, I'm just loving recording this year. It's just so, exciting to me. And I just feel like we're uncovering new concepts and ideas all the time. And I use that to feed my narrative and how whatever I'm working on. So yeah, it's definitely not, I'm not getting sick of it. It's just like, I feel like 2025 is just a whole new power band. Level up.
I feel the same. I feel the same.
You just you had so much in there that I want to comment on, and I have to wait. So 3 days a month you do your recordings.
Yeah.
And you did 8 podcasts a day over those 3 days.
Yeah.
That has to be pretty exhausting, number one. But also to go back to what you said with the being invigorated by the conversation with the guests. One thing I know that I get, Kris and I talk about this, but I'll speak for myself at the moment. Kris can comment on his thoughts on it, but I have a feeling I understand his thoughts as well from our conversations. That's one of the things I have a passion about with this. I think with technology and the way that the world is, and the opportunity to meet individuals from different cultures, different countries, different organizations, to be able to talk with them and really get a good understanding not even a good understanding, but just to get, like, as you had mentioned, the perspective of someone else. It's enlightening in a sense. And I've learned so much from just doing this podcast with the conversations. So
yeah, I feel the same way, because you do have a brand new perspective of the things that you think you knew, or I knew, and realize, like, oh, that's a good way to put it. And the fact that the technology now, it's like, allows us to do this, right? Like, I mean, you're 21 hours ahead of me, and being able to learn how do you use certain technology in your part of the world that's different from mine, and it does allows me. It allows me to go back and rethink of how I should approach certain things as well. It's fascinating. We're white, and I'm white belt for life, right? Like, I always tell Brad that. It's like, that's my mindset.
That.
I gotta learn it. That
is so cool. I'm gonna note that one down straight off. That was just like a connecting concept, right?
Yeah,
very cool.
It's another good thing with the podcast is as Kris had mentioned, just many people I've become friendly with too, and you know, everybody brings something to it as well, and it's always great to see someone in person. And I enjoy Kris is saying too, because in this day, 2025, the way technology is moving and how many things are being created, you know, it's not like it was, you know, 1,000 years ago, 100 years ago. I mean, how long did it take to, you know, for us to forge steel, you know, back from hands? You know, if you look at the amount of time it took in the Industrial Revolution to create things versus the amount of time it does now, nobody can know everything. You can know some things, and I don't even think anybody can know anything about a particular topic anymore. I think you can know a lot, so you are always constantly learning. So you've done 8 years, 641 episodes. You definitely have to have a passion for it, and you have how many different podcasts that you do?
So I have one podcast called the Microsoft that was the old name, the Microsoft Innovation Podcast. And within it, there is now 5 shows. So there's the OG was when I was just Dynamics 365, right? This is pre-Power Platform days. And so it was very much focused around that. And so some of the shows have changed names over time, or I've retired the show. So as my career kind of transitioned from Dynamics into Power Platform, that show, the Power Platform show, became one of my key shows. Then I had a show called the Power 365 show, where I only interviewed Microsoft FTEs on that show, generally product team type folks on that show. It's now been renamed to the Copilot show, because every Microsoft employee needs to be thinking about selling AI nowadays, now that Microsoft is an AI company. And so that's been a transition that I've made. I have another show that is the MVP show, where I endeavored to interview all the MVPs in Microsoft Biz Apps. And that was like 4 or 5 years ago. I started that thinking that I would exhaust that list, and I have never been able to exhaust that list. And that's only Biz Apps MVPs. I just made the decision in about November last year, is that I'm going to stop just recording Microsoft Biz Apps MVPs. And I'm going to go broader. I'm going to just seek out MVPs that I reckon have a different view on things and tech. And my changes that I've seen in how my career has evolved is that I cannot just stick within the one vertical category anymore, because I feel everything's blending, and particularly AI is blending everything. You know, M365 has become massively on my radar in the last year because of Copilot. And if you want to edit them with Copilot Studio, which was a Biz Apps product, you've got this whole blend now. And now with Foundry, it's like now we're over in the Azure space. Everything AI has something to do with data. So that means, well, you got to go into Fabric, right? You can't not be in Fabric as part of it. And then security is always prevalent. So that takes you into Purview. And so I'm just finding where I've traditionally stayed within the single lane, it's now in the consulting with the type of customers I work with, I've got to have this broader lens of Microsoft's full offering to bring to bear. But of course, my role is no longer working on a specific tool. Like other people do that, but I need to be able to stretch strategy more broadly across this entire tool set, rather than just one. So the exposure is just increasing. And then I have this other show called the Ecosystem Show, and that's 5 of us that go on and we just riff on whatever around ecosystem architecture. And so once again, that's bringing it's more aimed, I suppose, at enterprise architects, the conversation, and really holistically looking at your entire data estate, your entire tool stack. And this can involve outside Microsoft. So, whether that be Pega, SAP, Oracle, ServiceNow, any number of other products. But how do you really look at ecosystem as an architecture model, because it really affects where you let data reside. And in the past, most ecosystems are built around a single big thing, like if it's SAP is your core thing, and then it's a case of everyone try to retrofit everything into that one thing, and so you don't necessarily get the best outcome for the organization. So that one's just a great one where it's a totally different format than just, one-to-one interviewing. And then the one that I just kicked off is the AI Advantage is a new show that I'm just about to. So we just recorded 1 episode last week. We'll get probably 2 episodes more in the can before I go to publish, just so I've got then a pipeline of that. But this is all about, how do I reskill, no matter what my job, in an AI world? So how do I
that is a great topic.
Skills I need, to grow. If I'm a school teacher, if I'm a lawyer, if I'm a CEO, the way you work, you need to totally reskill. And so it's really going to be bringing people on that are, what are they doing to reskill? Because I'm really into AI from how do I practically apply it? Because I feel there's so much snake oil out there. There's so much marketing out there, and there's so much theory out there. But I want to know, how do I practically move the dial in what I do each day, that I can, because I think the biggest advantage we have as humans that I don't think robots and or AI is going to have is our ability to potentially 100x what we do. Because if we cyborg ourselves with AI, right? In other words, we use AI to enhance and assist everything we do.
This is where the sci-fi is coming in right here. Just like the good old...
Well, here's the crazy
I agree with
thing,
you.
Right? This device, right? People have been a cyborg for some time. They just don't realize it's called a smartphone. But how much of everything do we do is an extension? Ourselves are now extended to this device in some form or some way. So we are now electronically assisted in just about everything we do all the time.
Yes, and so I could talk to you for days. I could already tell, because there's so much to unpack on here.
You're doing a lot of shows.
You are
That's
doing
amazing.
a lot. I do want to get back to that reskilling for AI, also with the position of AI encompassing and blending everything together, because in essence it does, because now AI it's I almost think we'll be able to have that point of create me this thing, you go to bed, you wake up and it's there.
100%. I believe.
And then the
that
reskilling is true as well. I mean, some of these things are tough to put your head around. You really have to open your mind and release the bounds. It goes back to your rules, which I'm going to take that as well. It's we put ourselves in boxes and we think that some things are not possible. But you have to take a step back, because you do need to think differently when you're working with AI. Just like, how many years ago we used to go into the field and pick vegetables, and then we created machinery to make that job easier, and then eventually do most of it for us. right? So then the person that managed the farm, they would do other things, but they had to basically reskill themselves to become more productive, I guess you could say, for lack of better terms for the conversation within there. So we need to do that. So I can't wait to hear that one. I just can you just throw me on there? I just want to listen to the conversations and just jump in and just chime in every now and then.
You got to tune in on those.
That is fast. That topic is fascinating to me. It's interesting to me. But now you have all these shows. So I want to just we'll branch off to the AI and the Power Platform and stuff momentarily if we have the opportunity.
Yeah.
But I see a lot of podcasts. I talk a lot of individual podcasts. Kris and I do this podcast, and we know what it takes to put up the podcast and what drives the podcast to keep it alive. How do you do it? So you do 3 days a month, 24 episodes, according if my math is right. I can do math still. Soon I won't be able to, and then my smartphone device will be plugged into my head, and it would just come up for me. I wouldn't even have to think. It would just say 24 episodes.
Yeah.
How do you keep up with it? How do you manage this? How do you produce it? How do you keep up with the work? And you obviously have a family and a job with it. Yeah.
So my thing in business and in life that is my kind of the way I view things is, how can I scale? Right? How can I scale anything I do? When I started my 90-day mentoring challenge, I was in London at the time, and I didn't want to mentor 3 or 4 people a year. I was like, how could I mentor 100 people a year? How could I mentor 1,000 people a year? Like right now I'm looking, how can I mentor 2,000 people a year? And so I look at everything from how can I scale something? And one of the things that, years ago, unrelated, before I got into IT, I was in the medical industry and around manufacturing and clean rooms. And I had this mentor that I actually went to North Africa with, who is a scientist for this organization called the Fred Hollows Foundation. And what they do is that a lot of people go blind because they get cataract blindness. And you can, with a surgical procedure in that country costing $30, chop out the lens at the front of the eye on both eyes and put in what's called an interocular lens, which is made out of perspex, basically. And somebody that was totally blind can now totally see, 100%, and good for you.
Wow. For $30.
For $30.
Which currency? Because $30 in the United States isn't even getting you a pen in the in the reception room. Right?
30 US. And if you were to do that operation right now in the US, that's about $15,000 to $20,000 operation. If I was doing it in my country, that would be around a $5,000 operation to do that, right? So here's the crazy thing. So this guy, so the guy I went with, but anyhow, this big concept around this word Kaizen, which is a Japanese term, right, of constant improvement. And so I use that, and I look at scaling through batching. If I can stop context switching and get into a mindset of let's say in this case podcasting, I know my day is going to flow so well because I am not doing podcasting one episode here and then I'm off working on an ERD, for a project, or sitting down and having an executive discussion in the next meeting. I block out those 3 days, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, because it works well with the time offset for Mondays and Fridays and other people's time zones. And I use Calendly for scheduling. I have a lady in Canada that runs all my scheduling of the guests. So she handles, apart from me, I will always identify the guest. But just here's an example of scale. So on the weekend, I extracted from the Ignite website every single person that delivered from Microsoft an Ignite session on AI. Right? Cross-reference that. So I extract that, I give it to my scheduling lady, and I get her to put that into a spreadsheet. What was their session? What was the session title? What was their name? What's their LinkedIn URL, which she has gone and looked up on LinkedIn for that person, right? I then reached out to 63 of those people with a personal message about the Ignite session they did. And I'm not saying I want them to come and talk about that particular session. I'm saying, hey, I want to talk about AI with you. And I then basically, created a template, swapped out their name, their session, and that was it. Oh, and added their email address. And so I went through, sent those all out. Now today, because the time zone, right, coming on with the US, etc., now they're flowing in. And podcasting gives you unbelievable access.
Yes.
Like, I don't care if Judson at Microsoft, right, who's like one level down from Satya, did a session, I've emailed him. I've reached out to him, right? And of course, one of my things are, you might feel you're not the right fit, so who on your team is? And so this morning, I have an email here where this guy has introduced me to the lady that authored Microsoft Graph.
Wow.
That's excellent.
Right? I've looked her up on LinkedIn. She's a vice president of that category, and he has referred her, like, she's in the email thread now with her boss saying, hey, you should come on this podcast.
That's amazing.
See,
right?
That's the way to do it. I like that.
Yes.
Chris, I'm taking notes. Don't you worry.
And so, and here's the other thing. The number, I've had multiple CVPs from Microsoft on the podcast. I would never have that access to these people outside of having a platform that allows me to elevate them. Just wouldn't be interested. Wouldn't be interested. And so I do everything from a scale. So as I say, she does all that scheduling. And so there's a two-part process to that. I always do a briefing call, right, with them, where we're going to think about topics and themes, but also lets them feel comfortable that, because for a long time, it was funny in podcasting, I'd have people reach out and go, you should have grilled that person on that point. You should not let them off the hook on that. And I'm like, listen, I'm not a celebrity tabloid. I'm going to hold you to an account.
Trigger clickbait.
Like, the last thing I want is my guest to feel uncomfortable on the show, because I want them to come back next year or the year after as they've progressed in their careers. I want it to be a good experience for them. And so that's extremely important to me. And so what else do I do?
That is important, by the way. And we have the same belief with that.
Yep.
Is we want to have a conversation with somebody because we want people to come back to speak with us again, but we also want other people to speak with us. So some think that the podcast is meant to be a point to put someone on the hot seat. I mean, yes, you can ask them questions if you know of something or whatever, but you do have to know when to stop because it's important. And I think that's where some podcasts become more successful, because the people listening to it can relate to the conversation. It's not rehearsed, and it's not a marketing, again, for the sake of the conversation. It's not a pre-planned, prefabricated conversation. It's a real world conversation with, in your case, some of the members of the Microsoft team that, hold positions for products or areas that are significant. And that's a key point.
We focus a lot on the human side, because, there's always going to be technology and people behind the products, but we want to know who that person is. They're someone that they can relate to, like what Brad is saying, right? It's seeing from someone else's perspective and where they're coming from. So in a way, for me, the way I view it, it's almost like an indirect mentorship, because I'm sure people are maybe listening and said, hey, that sounds like me. How did they get there? And then they share their story, and it's like, oh, I see the path they took. And hearing that in return, it's that's what I thrive, and I enjoy that, getting to know people.
Yeah, I like it. So just to wrap that out, I use Calendly to do all the scheduling. That just aligns all the different time zones, right, so easily. And then I do the podcast recording. I use Riverside like this. Even like, I'm impressed with your guys' background. I haven't seen that feature that I could change out that background. And I noticed it was on the land in as well. Are you on the very expensive plan?
I don't know. What plan?
Whatever Brad got.
It was one of those I paid for the year. I'll have to look at the plan to see which plan we have.
It's the same plan as me, because as in from the plan above this is like tens of thousands of dollars. It's at Riverside's
I'm not paying
weird.
tens of thousands of dollars.
Yeah, it's weird how they go. It's like economical, because I was like, one day I was like, oh, book a call with us to talk about the next level and what you get. So I had this call, and it's like, yeah, it's about $10,000 a year. I'm like, yeah, I'm a hobby podcaster. Like, it ain't necessary. Like,
no.
This is just all I want to do is allow another person on my account, right? So I could have a separate login, that's
it's funny how that goes. It goes from one person to two people, but the cost for 1 to 2 people, you might as well write your own software. I think it is a great tool, though. It makes amazing. I can't say enough how
and
great
they just keep
of a
improving
tool it is.
it. I've never come across a piece of software they keep dropping value all the time.
Yeah,
every day. And I really appreciate the technology that when Kris and I started, we started like most people. We started with Teams. Yeah. Then we went to Zoom,
GoToMeeting or Zoom or something.
Yeah. Then we went to Zoom, and then as we got more into it, had more guests, and sort of for lack of better terms, found a sort of niche. We're like, we really need to be able to have separate audio tracks, separate video tracks. And Riverside's method of locally saving and uploading those, so you get the web recording and those, is wonderful, because I can't tell you how many calls we've had with individuals such as yourself that are way away. And you have internet issues, you have connectivity issues. And when the final publication comes, you can't even tell that there was a challenge.
So this dude blew my mind last week. He was from Spain, and he works for Microsoft on doing a lot of their stuff that goes to YouTube. And so I wanted to do it behind the scenes, like, how does it all work? And he blew my mind with Riverside. He gets the interviewer from Microsoft to log on a smartphone into Riverside and just set that up on a tripod or whatever, and that's another total different camera view. So I can actually be logged in twice with my phone as another camera.
Whoa, wait a second. So
unbelievably, man, mind-blowing.
Because you can just mute the phone, right? While you just have another video.
You don't even think about it. And so one of his things that he does is
hold on a second. So I can record. So if I logged in on my phone right now, with Riverside,
right now, you could join this session right now
and have a different camera angle,
and now have a camera angle up to the side or wherever you place it, and it's going to record its own channel, right? Its own video. So now you're just creating B-roll that you can use to mix up. So this guy, what he does, Phil Topness at Microsoft, what he does is he jumps out of character and talks to his audience while he's interviewing somebody. As he does.
That's awesome.
So what he does is that he'll turn to the camera and go, "Can you believe what this guy's saying?" And then when they do that, cut that up and post, it looks like it's just perfectly. And he'll do a couple of those that will never make the cut. But on camera, on the video, it looks so cool, because he's just like breaking the third wall, so to speak,
awesome.
From a dramatic perspective. Yeah,
they use Riverside too. That's impressive.
Riverside, I can't say enough how great Riverside is. But Kris, you know exactly what I'm thinking, because do you remember the time we had a time where Kris logged in, I logged in, everybody was in the same room, and we couldn't get it all together. We wanted the camera, but the microphones were picking up. It became a challenge because of the feedback. But now with that,
wow.
It's such a cool
I'm
feature.
always learning from you, Mark, because last time we spoke, you gave me some stuff.
You both would if you're both in the same room in that scenario, you've both got mobile phones, right? So now you've got 2 other cameras. You can add the additional camera feeds, right, to the maximum that Riverside will take.
Yeah, I think it's 8 people you can have into a call. Yeah. Which,
it's
I'm
so
mind
cool,
blown
right?
now. I am, Kris, This is
See, we're always learning something from Mark. So you see, his OG's been this for a long time. I'm learning.
well 641
it's
episodes. It's
yeah.
it's so I see a lot of podcasts coming and going in the course of my day, in the course of my week, and I understand it. Is
People
you're
don't
even
realize,
alluding
right,
to
what they're committing to.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. So a question I have here, and what you just spoke about with, some of the things, having someone help you, there is work behind it. It does look easy to just sit down and have a conversation, but there's post-production if you want it to look well, if you want it to sound well.
Yeah.
So I see a lot of them come and go, but you've been doing it for 8 years, 641 episodes, shows that have transitioned appropriately as the times change because you need to update and stay fresh. If you could give advice or two things. One, advice to somebody who's interested in starting a podcast or who has a podcast, what you think that they should know or some words of wisdom to be successful with starting a podcast, continuing a podcast, and what it takes for a podcast to be produced.
I would say the fundamental thing that you need to nail is the ability to listen. And I know it's not technical or anything, but the reason that I've gone so long is that my fundamental goal from day one was to use the podcast. The selfish reason I started podcasting was I needed a practical way to learn how to listen.
Interesting.
I like that.
Right? I'd been in management positions for so long, I was really good at telling people what to do. And that I was the smartest person in the room always. Right? That's how I accelerated my career, because I was generally the smartest person in the room. And with that comes a belief that you're moving beyond a white belt, right? To use your metaphor before, right?
That was good.
And I want to, I really wanted to, like, honestly, I had a sign on my computer, like a Post-it note on my screen, which said, "Shut the fuck up," which was telling me, because I would see that, ask a question and then shut up. Let them tell their, not have to add my story to everything, my view is this and blah, blah, blah. No, let's make them the superstar and let's really listen. And that's why I've learned so much from my guests. So that's the fundamental thing. The other thing, don't spend money on tech. Do it for the minimum you can until you realize that this is something you seriously want to do. And on day one, you might be serious. Like I just saw someone mentioned this morning on another call that I had with a guy in Brazil, and he was saying, I've just been invited to be a guest on this podcast. And, this individual that started this podcast, I've just finished mentoring him on my 90-day mentoring challenge last year. And he's doing like so many things. And I know it's almost like he's trying lots of things, but will he be podcasting in a year's time? I don't know. It'll all depend on whether that's the thing that sticks for him or not. So, but then you get these people that go out and go, wow, it's all about the tech. I need to go get all the best tech. I need, I never had the Shure a Shure SM7B. I never had that on day one. When I was sitting in Nottingham in the United Kingdom doing a world travel in my cousin's apartment, I had my laptop on my Surface on it. The camera was on that, the microphone, that was it. The hum of the fan came through in the audio. It was low tech, man. But the thing is, sometimes you just got to get going and then trust the process that you'll get better with time. Things will become more important. This is my fourth microphone I think I'm on now. As I have learned and seen others, and my wife is about to get into podcasting, and I didn't get her a Shure SM7B. Rode have got a brilliant podcast microphone out there, which I think is where this microphone's been around for years and used in the audio industry. It's the newer ones are designed for for the, the world of podcasting. But if you get a Blue Yeti, I'll come and kill you. Never get a Blue Yeti microphone. It is the shittiest sounding overmarketed
So many
microphone
background noises with that
on
thing.
earth, right? That somebody could ever use. But yeah, so you iterate over time. And like even Riverside, the current software that I'm using, I've been through 4 different other softwares, even that were dedicated for podcasting. Outside of those ones, like, I've recorded on Skype for Business. I wouldn't say I've recorded on Link. I think Link had gone by the time I first started podcasting.
Wow, talk about a time machine.
It's crazy. It's crazy, the stuff but you get better and you get better. And there's multiple different formats that you can do podcasts in. That's why I've just found recently I'm branching out into, like, only last year did I do a solo podcast for the first time, recording, where I riffed for 30 minutes myself. And I was like, wow, I had never done that. And I usually took 30 minutes talking to myself on air. But yeah, it was crazy. It's crazy.
And as long as you get something out of it for yourself, that's all that matters.
Yeah.
No, what you had just mentioned is important. To me, listening to you goes to your point, and that is also something that I have learned. I get anxious sometimes to speak because I don't want to lose my train of thought. So I try to jot down notes of things so I can go back to it because I want to hear what you have to say. Because speaking with someone like you have so much to me in the short words that you're saying. Like you just talked about some things, but you uncovered so much about what it takes to be a podcast, about you don't need the tech, you just need the process. You need to, and I think also not having the tech helps you with the process because you learn how to progress. Not just saying I have the fanciest mic and now the microphone's not working, so this is garbage. You kind of have to go through the evolution of it, which is important. And the
consistency
big thing,
too.
The big thing is the passion for it, where what I heard you say, I'm just going with you. Like, these are the things that I was thinking with it, telling you my story, right? What you just told me not to do, I'll do. So it's, but for you to be able to sit and talk with yourself and just go off and talk says a lot. Because you have a passion for the podcast, you have a passion for the topic that you want to speak about, which is another thing that, if I could throw in something is you have to have a passion behind this because it is a lot of work. And if you think of it as work or you think you're going to get X from it, you're not. It's something that you have to do it for the reason of passion. And we have planning calls too. And I tell everybody, Kris, when we talked also, it's, if it's relatable and somebody can get something from it. And every single time I say, even if it's only me, right? Because my goal is that somebody can get something from the podcast, even if it's myself. And I've always appreciated learning from the individuals that we speak with. And you do it by listening.
Totally.
So
I love it. I love it. It's not cheap, by the way. So my wife, we've got into business together in the last 24 months, 12 months, really.
Oh no, I want to hear that story too.
And so she went through our accounting system and looked at what the cost to run the podcast was, and I'd never done that. It costs $18,000 US a year for me to run my podcast. That's not including any of my time. That's just the outgoing bills I pay to run the podcast, because I don't do my post-production. I outsource all that. So for each one of those shows, I have a different post-production editor. And this is, once again, going to scalability. If my editor falls over, because they're in countries all around the world, those editors, I don't want to lose all my episodes because my podcast post-production person decides it's not for them anymore or switches career or whatever, right? And so I have individuals that do all that work for me. My thumbnail cover art, a guy in Nigeria does that for me. So it's definitely a multinational run operation. I've got people in Australia, people in the Philippines that are doing those different editing of those artifacts. And then, of course, you've got the whole publishing schedule, making sure it's going out, that it's getting posted on social media, that you're writing the right blurbs, titles, all that kind of stuff, which, I use Riverside as my hosting platform, and it has a functionality in there that made my podcast viewership really jump when they bought it out, which was they had embedded AI, and they give you 5 potential titles for this episode based on the content in the transcript. Well, just take the MVP show, for example. If you go back 3 years or 4 years, you would see, hey, it's Brad on the MVP show. That's the title of it. I'm listening. Hey, it's Christoph on the MVP show. Like, wow, that's a real hook me into your episode opening line, right? Yet now it's much more, detailed. I remember having a lady on from Turkey on the show, and it brought Turkey into the title. It brought a couple of other things. And of course, it just expands the viewership, because now people that are going, oh my gosh, somebody else in Turkey is doing this. And they're all listening to it. They're sharing it with their friends. Look at this. And so their AI functionality got really, really good. It's funny now, I'm thinking of turning that off and not paying for that feature. It's an extra $20 on Buzzsprout, because I feel that their LLM behind it is still 3.5.
I did notice that.
I'm like, that's not a good title. That title is no longer good enough for my expectation now. It was way better than what I had. And the other thing I noticed is that it takes too much from the opening preamble as the primary thing of the podcast, because LLMs are inherently lazy in that, right? They'll take the first little segment and go bang, I'll go with that. Where I'm wanting to go, I want the meat and potatoes towards the mid and latter half. That's what I want your description and title to be based on. And so that's still going to require manual interaction, because it means when I copy the transcript to say come up with a title, I'm only going to copy from after we've done the preamble, the intro. Once we're in the meat and potato, that's what I want you to build me the description and or title on. So that's a new thing that I'll be adding to the podcast this year and using just to enhance it.
Yeah, it's a good call out, because we do use Buzzsprout, and I do notice that it picks up very well in the first maybe 10 minutes of conversation, and after that I'm like, what is it talking about? That's not even close to what we were talking about. And so, but Brad's been giving me all the descriptions, so he's been my AI.
Yes, yes. I do use the Riverside AI for some, but we've been experimenting with the descriptions, with some guidance and trying to, as you had mentioned, just get it to become more catchy and something to pick up on that actually encompasses what somebody could expect to listen to bring up. But also, every episode's not for everybody as well. So it's the other thing with the podcast is you can't expect to have 1 million people listen to every single episode. You just have to put it out and see that
it helps someone.
Well, I think, even over time. So you could release a podcast, and I've noticed that you could release a podcast in the first week or two. It's small listenership, and then a year later you see like something we spoke about last year. All of a sudden, it starts spiking.
Yeah,
So it's one of those things with podcasts being, as I always say, is timeless. You don't know when it will show up, where it will show up, or how it will show up. So.
Also, my most successful, isn't based on the number of downloads. Sometimes they're just my most surprising, like right now, my most successful podcast was with a guy in France, and it was about doing UX and UI for Power Apps. And this guy had no experience on Power Apps or at all. He wasn't a Microsoft person, right? He was a designer. And it's my most watched episodes of all time.
Interesting.
That's interesting.
Chris, I want to go back.
I went for somebody outside the game. Yeah.
No, I'd be curious to see.
Ours was actually the architecture behind Business Central, which is something we had done with a Microsoft
product manager. Right?
Product manager, and I was like, huh, and sometimes we're surprised by some of these statistics. That there's a market for people that trying to understand what is keeping up enterprise software, and that was our most listened and tuned in.
Interesting.
It's there's a lot to it. Well, Mr. Mark, I have a million questions for you, but I'm trying to be respectful. Do you have more time?
Yeah.
Usually,
we
can talk forever. Then we can talk forever then about the podcast stuff, because you've blown my mind on so many things. I'm still hung up on the camera. I still have my favorite new term called brules. You had taken white belt for life from Kris. I'm going to use brules going forward.
I will say, though, if I take a quick pause, I do want to say thanks for introducing us to Podpage. Yeah, because it allowed us to kind of move and kind of grew up a little bit, right? And then went to Podpage to redo our website. And so that's very, very helpful tip. So I appreciate that.
Yes, thank you. We're still going through the transition to Podpage. Everything's on Podpage, but as you know, we had moved over there just before the end of the year, and we've been doing this for close to 4 years now. I can't even believe that. It's like you've been doing it for 8. That's like for us, it's almost 4 years. It'll be 4 years in a few months. And we have all that content that was brought over, and now obviously some of the features that are in Podpage we didn't have before. And again, with the time commitment, we're just going in slowly and adjusting what needs to be adjusted for the previous episodes. And that's what Kris and I talk about is we'll eventually get to it, and the new episodes we get the new stuff. Yes. That is another one. Like Podpage and Riverside are the two staples, in my opinion, that you need to have, because
100%.
Of the feature and functionality.
It's a trifecta, right? It's Riverside, Buzzsprout, and and Podpage. I think, like, my goal this year is to get more audience participation. And Podpage has a thing called voicemail on it, where somebody can literally click a button, they approve their, to take audio, and they can record something, right? And so that AI advantage show, I've multiple times encouraged people, given a bit.ly link, I've created a bit.ly link, so a short link for them to be able to access it, and leave me a voice message, because then I'm going to play that voice in a future episode and address whatever it is, or speak to whatever they talk about. But it's allowing that person now to come into the show, right? And that's such a cool feature.
That is a cool feature.
I've had it there for as long as I've had Podpage, which I don't know how many years it is now, but nobody's ever used it. I've never encouraged it. I've never talked about it, but I'm wanting a much more participant engagement in the podcast, if possible, using audio rather than just
that'd be cool. Found on the bottom right-hand corner.
That's it.
On our website.
That's it. That's where it is.
Record your voice.
No,
that's pretty amazing.
Well, with that, just a conversation with us. Nobody's listening. Have you ever? Because we're going to be doing a few things this year, with similar to what you're doing, just kind of to growing and branching out. Have you ever done any live podcasts? Or thought of doing live podcasts? You're talking about the voicemail to get the audience participation. What about time zone? Taken out of the whole conversation, obviously. But live podcast, which then you syndicate afterwards.
Yeah. So for about a year and a half, I did a weekly one, fully live. So live stream to YouTube. People would be commenting. Like, I use OBS to run that configuration on desktop. I did it with a mate in the US, in Florida. And we would banter but the thing is, what we noticed is that the audience, you would always get your audience that were the same people. We didn't find after a year and a half that we're attracting new people. It was just the same core of loyal followers that wanted to put stuff in the chat and be in the banter and that type of stuff. And so I knocked it on the head, because it didn't seem to be going anywhere, and that engagement numbers, right? One of the things I think that people like podcasts is that they listen at a time or watch at a time when it's convenient for them. And what I noticed when I started this, it was all around commute. people, if they're on a train or on a bus or whatever method of commute in their car, that's when they would put the podcast on. The problem with the live in a global market is that there's only going to be a fraction of people that their time is free right now when your time is free. And so that's why I've never, I've even, Riverside has this new full live function and stuff that you could do. In Florida, I was at a conference and I set up 3 cameras on a rig, all running off my Surface laptop, and I did full live streaming from the conference floor. This is pre-COVID. And the amount of people that watched the live was minuscule. Heaps of people watched the after the fact. And I would just I was in the middle of the expo area and had a whole area cordoned off, big backdrop, all provided by the conference organizers. They thought it was epic, right? We're going to do live streaming from the floor. And, Charles Lamanna, for example, I did a 30-minute off-the-cuff interview with him,
Wow.
both on cameras. Boom. I had 2 chairs. I was in one chair. He was in the other. We just sat down and we'd just riff on stuff. But once again, the live was more effort to keep it live, and you imagine conference Wi-Fi.
Oh, absolutely.
Although in this case, I actually had wired. I was one of my prerequisites to doing it is that they had to give me a wired internet connection, just because I knew conference Wi-Fi is notoriously bad. And then the following year, Microsoft had me do that in Atlanta at one of their conferences. And it's just such a, once again, it's more fun, the actual engagement in there, and you'd have people standing around the peripheral watching what was going on. But the tech is so amazing that we could do this on what I could fly from the other side of the world in my suitcase, equipment-wise, and provide this amazing, high fidelity experience. So I've definitely played with all these things. But it's the traditional podcasting and mainly audio, but I'm going more and more to video podcasts now, is kind of the model that's worked.
No, I agree with you on it. I mean, I think the live is fun, and it's also live is good because if you, as you mentioned, the post-production, not even the post-production, but the post-broadcast, individuals can still watch. But I know I listen to a lot of podcasts, like you said, and it's always of opportunity. I can listen to it during the day. I listen to it usually while I'm working in the background, and then I'll pause it if I have a meeting or something. So it's rare that I listen to a podcast from end to end because I don't have the opportunity. As you mentioned, if I'm commuting somewhere, if I'm out walking, I stop and go. But I do like the live aspect of it because, again, like you said, you get the cool factor of being maybe at a location and doing something live, and then also maybe limit the post-production that you need to do because it's just one and
mixing
done
on the fly, right?
And I've been practicing. I can do it pretty well now with the Stream Deck and using OBS.
Stream Deck is amazing, right? In fact, anything from Elgato I've just bought more Elgato stuff this week. And for me, I've got to bring that all in from overseas because it never hits where, New Zealand for years. But I don't know if you've noticed, they've just brought out a hub for the Stream Deck, a USB hub that you've actually got to unscrew it and it fits inside it and gives you this on-desk hub as well as an SD card reader and stuff like that directly on it's for the Elgato. That's the latest, this one here with the knobs and stuff.
Yeah, I don't have that one. I have just the one with the buttons. I didn't use it for the longest time.
One, right?
Yes.
You got this one.
That's what I got.
Yeah, that's exactly what I have.
And have you got the foot pedal one under your desk as well? Yeah.
No.
I got the foot pedal one. I'm looking
Chris,
at you
I'm
now
learning so much today.
in my Elgato HD cam through an Elgato teleprompter, which is just, honestly, this alone, every person that does Teams calls needs to get this config because it allows for such a much better personal experience, and you're never going, what's the audience reaction? What's the audience reaction on other screens? You're seeing it right in front of you. And I was in this Teams meeting the other day, and I was saying, let's call them truth bombs that not everybody wanted to hear the truth, right? But the thing is, as I was saying it, I was able to read everybody's reaction. 5 other people on that call, their faces were right in front of me, and I'm talking right into the camera. So I knew I had their attention. I could see how they responded to what I was saying. And it just creates a much more personal experience when you can, have this. And it was only MVP Summit last year. I had another MVP because they weren't even shipping these around the world. Pick it up for me, bring it to conference MVP Summit, and have it. And at it, he's another podcaster, content creator, and he was like, "Man, why did you buy this? How And like, guess what? He has one now because it's just it is so awesome. Much better than like camera attachments that have these little like mirror effects and you put your iPhone in. No, it's a proper dedicated. There's screen, the reflection is a proper extension. It flips it all by default. I can teleprompt it as well if I wanted to do that. But yeah, solid.
More tips.
Yeah, this is yeah. I'm light years behind Mark now because I was been practicing over the holiday break of being able to switch scenes, transition scenes, and everything.
Yeah.
I mean, OBS we don't use OBS, we just use Riverside. But for some of the other recordings that I want to do in 2025, I've been messing with OBS and with the Steam Deck. I mean, the Stream Deck. Excuse me. The only thing I used the Stream Deck before was to like copy and paste on the Mac. Show hidden files and copy and paste. Plain text. That was it. But now
my favorite feature is having all the time zones that I work across, having all those clocks on it, right in front of you. I can see Seattle, London, Singapore, Chicago, New York, Sydney, Brisbane, Madrid, Zurich, Vienna. Sorry, that's Brussels. Was the other one? Not Brisbane. And I've got all those times there. So when I have a guest come on, I'm like, I can see kind of what time they're in straight away. And then the other one I love is a color picker from the Stream Deck. So there'll be a color on screen, and wherever your cursor is, you just hit the button. It gives you the hex code on it. I've used that a lot.
Nice.
Yeah.
I have to use it more. I have to use it more. Maybe I'll get the issue is I have multiple setups. I like to move around.
Yeah.
So I have basically 3 workstations here. To work with. So I need to just pick one and
pick a spot
and make it cool like yours.
When I set up my studio, which was, once again, this is only a more recent thing, like I got sound attenuation on the walls and stuff like that. It made it so much easier. Like I used to record from anywhere on the road and you could tell in the audio quality, the experience, that type of thing. Now I purposely, every conference I go to, would you do a podcast live from the conference? Nope. It's just, I know when I've got everything at my fingertips, it's going to be a much better output. It might seem fun to do at a conference, but I'm like, that means I've got to have a bunch of microphones. I've got to take my Rodecaster desk. No, that's a hassle for me to lug that around the world.
It's
I
much
do
easier
though
when you
have
have
a
setup.
Rode kit though that is that size, my entire Rode kit now, and that's pretty epic for doing podcasts at an event.
Podcasts on the road.
Now, having a dedicated workspace is important because it's easy to just sit down and do versus set up and do and then break down or whatever. We've tried to do some live and some on the road, and you learn everything. You'd have to try everything, and you learn. Is what I can say with it, and too.
And it's fun, the learning.
Oh,
it is fun learning.
It is the creativeness is the fun part for me, and the meeting the individuals as well too. I have so many things. I have so many things back to the AI conversation that we started off with. Not to take away from the podcast portion of it, but so you had mentioned AI and basically just blending everything and the need to reskill. Where do you see AI in the future of ERP software, or even Power Platform? And now you have, with Copilot Studio, where everybody can create their own piece of it. Now within ERP, the word, last year the word was Copilot. This year the word is agent, which was the tail end of last year. Within because you work with Power Platform at this point outside of the podcast. Where do you see AI as it fits within the future of the ecosystem?
People might not like my answer.
I'll like your answer. I can already tell.
I think it's all going to disappear. As in, what I mean by that is that the concept of you and I interfacing or building out solutions is what's going to disappear. In the Power Platform, we have a tool called Power Automate. We have Power Apps. We have Power BI. All what I would call the hammer, the screwdriver, the pliers of our industry, right? They're the tools that we use. Now, you might have F&O, you might have Business Central, you might still be on a Navision system, right? Or an NAV system. The thing is, these are all software that were designed for us to keyboard in data, run a report, get data out of, look at inventory levels, look at manufacturing data, look at, where we are up in a business process. I think all that's going to be abstracted away from us in our day-to-day lives. So I'm not saying that software is going away. I'm not saying Power Automate's going away. But if I'm a Power Automate consultant, in 5 years' time on your title, I would be shocked. Because that will be, oh yeah, remember that software? We know it's running behind the scenes, but all our interfacing, all our comms will happen via APIs into that data. We don't care where it is. We don't care what the interface over it is, or we will choose the interface based on what we're doing right now. So I think that our role as consultants in the space is going to dramatically change in the next 5 years, right? I don't see a long-term strategy of becoming a Power Automate desktop expert, from an automation layer. I don't see RPA as being a long-term strategy in my career.
I think you hit that because, and I think it's accelerated, and it's something that you have to grasp your head around. If you look at the conversations on agents, how agents will work in the specific functions, and then the ability for AI to model and do things, you will have, and I say this abstractly, you will have data that exists. And as you had mentioned, I'll be able to say, I want to see this, wait a few minutes, and it will be there. So that interface that you have, we primarily focus with Business Central. I think that will change as well too, because now the order entry system, looking at the sales orders, like that whole interface will change to where
an agent does it for you.
Well, the agent will get the data in, agent can process some of the data, can do some of the analysis. There's certain things that can be automated that people review, but how you review it will change, and how you take that data and process it will change, and what you process will change, because these systems are getting faster, more structured. So that dynamic ability to process will change as well.
Mark, you hit a point there that I feel I have the same opinion, where the consultant you are today will be different within the next couple of years, because you're so used to the technical aspect of putting it all together, architecting it. It's no longer that. It's almost where the consultant will become more of a conversational business consultant rather than a specific product. Because as a consultant, you have to look at the bigger picture. And when you look at a bigger picture, you're looking at different technologies, right? It's now becoming that. It's going to shift. It's going to be pretty wild.
Massively.
It will go much quicker than it has, because we can say that it has evolved over time with the way that technology has advanced, with data processing, with computer processing and architecture processing. And Kris, to your point, I agree or view that as well. It's your business knowledge and how to adapt to that and work with things is going to be important. Right now, even looking at ERP implementations, again, focusing on Business Central, now that they've introduced the D365 stack, I'll call it, with Power Platform and, all those tools, Power Automate, Power everything, Power Agent, AI, you no longer just say, let's limit it to the box of Business Central for a business to process the requirements that they have. It's how can we piece all these things together to give someone what they need to become where they'd like to be within their business. I'm in alignment with you in that sense that it will all disappear. It will just be like one of those robots, right? Or one of those systems where it's all just there.
Yeah.
Just give me this. I don't care how it's all connected. Give me this.
I think we'll have input devices, which could be they could be tactile input devices, they could be visual, they could be auditory input devices, right? And then I think we're going to have all our screens, and you're going to go, bring me up the 3-month forecast on product X and put it on that screen there, and it would have context of you pointing if you had a projection screen or whatever. I can put it on my iPad, and it will have the context of all those devices. But when you ask for that data, it will just be formatted without the chroma, without the noise of every interface, and it will just be data. So I'm feeling that how we interface in the future from a visual element will look a lot more like really, really awesome graphic design on steroids and no interface. You won't need a hamburger menu because you're not going to go up there, open, the whole concept of navigation is going to go away, right? Why will you need navigation? You'll just command through to your next level wherever you want. You'll go, I need to drill deeper into those numbers. And by the way, all our enrichment feeds on any data set. So if we're talking about a customer, it's found overnight the latest news item regarding this customer and how it's going to actually plummet their ordering potential over the next 3 months. And your system's already updated with that data and said, hey, we're going to need to mitigate that by bringing on 3 new customers over in this area. But you didn't think that that's what you needed to do, but it's gone, hey, I know that this is going to be the outcome based on patterns of the last 15 years. I think that we're going to be just like being able to operate at whatever speed our mind will let us go at. And so I think, man, every consultant is going to need their skills to develop master communicator skills. You're going to have to be able to communicate at a level that,
I said this to somebody a year or two ago. I said relationships is going to be the important part of this industry. And what I mean by relationships is what you said, the ability to communicate, the ability to share knowledge. And I'm going to take back what you said as fast as our minds can process. So we're saying, for the sake of this conversation, and it's a fun conversation, it's all prediction based on our thoughts. Within 5 years, we'll be in that state. I'm going to say within 10 years, we're going to go back to a word that you said, and I wanted to talk about this as well, too, along with the AI. We're going to be cyborgs. You're talking about the context of devices. I think if you look at what we have done medically with individuals, which is great, with the ability to hear again, with the ability to see again. If somebody has a challenge with one of their limbs because of an accident or maybe something when they were born, they had a challenge and they can put a hand on them so that they can navigate easier. You can put some of these devices, I think, where that information will just be there. It's weird in a sense that you can think it and it will come based upon all the information that's there. Even today with the phone, as you had talked about, or on the computer, in conversation, I'm anti using the phone like when we're eating dinner and such, so that we can have that human interaction, unless it's the concept of sharing something or we're talking about something, we need to look it up. But how often do you look things up now? And how fast do you get the response? Even now with all the search engines no longer listing the websites, they give you the AI summary first, and then you can link to the websites for further information. So that is not that far off. Before, some of us would dream that this isn't our lifetime. I'm an old dude. This is my lifetime. We'll see this.
The way you mentioned earlier, Mark, when you described yourself, it's you got to think outside the box now, be able to not be confined within the parameters of what that technology does. You have to really think about that now further and learning about other products and services, and then allows you to become a better business consultant rather than a power automate consultant.
Yeah.
So things are changing.
Totally. And I think people need to get smarter about time horizons. You know, I need to get this done because it's, you know, it's going to be too late otherwise. I'm 53 and I've had 30 years in a career, right? And I feel like that, and by the way, that's my third career. So I had two others prior to going into IT. And at my age, I feel like I'm just starting over and I've got another 50 years to go, right? And so I think that some things around, oh, you need to be fast because it's going to be too late. I am now looking at how I'm educating myself is for another 50 years, right? And I know that if I can point to people that are 50 and they think life's on the decay, we're on the tail end, we're in our final years, you know, it's a path to retirement here. I'm just like, man, we're just getting started. And when you talk about cyborg, I think, you know, within 50 years, we could become immortal, right? Meaning that every medical condition is solvable. And the only reason people die of old age is not because of old age. It's a disease in old age, right? It's a degenerative disease generally that kills old people. So I think there's no reason why the body couldn't last 150 years if it was medically maintained from everything was repairable.
It's not only that, it's you supplement it. We talked about the cyborg with the mind, with information. Those are all parts of aging, unfortunately, where cognitively you slow down, for lack of better terms. It's just a part of age. But if you can augment that with being a cyborg, all of that information is still there. You don't forget that information. You can repair and enhance your body in a sense to keep it moving. Like, what do you need to keep moving? You need oxygen, you need blood. What is... Who's to say that we're gonna know? This is like sci-fi. This is sci-fi on steroids, right? In a sense.
Why can't you take all of you, put it on a system that someone had a conversation with you, and that could be long gone. Yeah, but someone could still have a conversation with me.
It's possible. Yeah. It's absolutely possible because
possible now.
The heart of the function of your heart is to pump blood. The function of your lungs is to expel waste. Yeah. You put oxygen in your body, goes and collects waste, so you expel the waste. Who's to say that can't be a mechanical function?
Yeah.
That works with your body. And look how small the phone is. This is the challenge is now we do have those devices that can keep individuals alive in the hospital, but they're large devices. Drop those devices to where it can be small. Thankfully, we have pacemakers. We have other devices like that today. Just imagine that
at scale.
At scale for the rest of the bodily functions.
Yeah,
Kris, to your point, you'll be around forever. It's sad that the world's population will have a challenge.
My mind will be around forever.
Yeah.
Right?
But will it even be your mind at that point? Right? You'll just have all of the information of the world.
We don't have to worry about world population sizing because so many countries, including China, some of the biggest populations in the world, Japan, etc., they're all in a population decline because of government policy. And now, human nature, selfishness, if you like, I don't support a kid. That's my money.
Yes.
Wow. Are you crazy? This is about my life. No, I don't know.
I've talked to many generations behind ours, and they don't want children.
So but there's that whole thing. I don't think we're going to overpopulate. I think, if anything, we're declining in that.
Thankfully, I want the turtles and the birds to live, to be honest with you. I say that statement, I say with all sincerity. I care for the planet and the animals and the structures of the planet. I don't want to say more so than people, but more so than people. But I think the population will go down. I say that in jest because now your companion will also be a cyborg.
Dude,
and you live forever.
You can fit in an SD card forever. That's it.
You can fit in an SD card.
I mean, we say some of this in jest, or at least I do, but it's add the sci-fi to it. If you go back even to the sci-fi movies, all that stuff seems to be coming
Yeah.
true, like with the imaginations.
Yeah.
But the advances in technology are increasing exponentially in shorter periods of time, to where you had mentioned, Mark, 50 years is a new horizon. It's not a decline. I'm just starting. Add more ability to not have some of the declining features of age, and we'll be 120 years old sitting down saying, okay, I'm thinking this with my process. This is, will we ever get to a point where nobody works?
I think the problem is the word work and the understanding of that. Are we going to get to the point where we don't have to trade time for money? Absolutely. Are we ever going to stop creating? Are we ever going to stop inventing? Like, for me, if I could, like, my goal right now is to eliminate trading time for money, right? As soon as I have got the mechanism, which I'm well on the way to doing, is allowing money to produce money, which is what most wealthy people do, right? They use
called mailbox money, Kris,
to create wealth.
Yeah.
Is that then I've got like an unlimited supply of projects I want to work on that don't make money, but they're projects I want to work on. They're ideas I want to bring to life. My oldest son, he's 19, and he's, the property I'm on here is 1.5 acres, and he goes, "You've just created Minecraft in real life." And I'm like, that's exactly right. That's exactly what, because we used to play Minecraft all the way through, his younger years. And now I have created a real Minecraft. It's not blocky, but it's me creating the world, like trees, plants, food, everything. I got a syntropic forest and everything that I'm developing, because I want to, one, reduce my sustainability footprint, but I have unlimited projects. I have unlimited number of countries and locations I want to see, and people I want to go see and spend time with. And if I didn't have to trade time for money, that would be epic. Sooner I'm there, the better.
That is the goal.
But I'm still back. Talk about getting something from the podcast. I got the most from this, I think. That definition of work, trading time for money. It goes back to the concept of what we've been started the episode with. What we just mentioned is you have to change your thought process.
Yeah.
To the limits that you know today, because those limits won't be there, or those boundaries, or those rules. It all comes together. Those rules that we have that tell us how we have to do something keep us in a box. And the reality is we don't have to stay in that box, in the sense, and can move forward and have to look at things differently. All this within my lifetime too.
Yes.
You only have a couple years on.
Fascinating.
So
within your lifetime.
I don't even know what to say anymore. And it's not that I ran out of things to say. I'm just left speechless, because your
mind's going through science fiction.
My mind is processing so many things with the conversation that we've had this morning, this afternoon, this evening. It's I could do this for days and for hours, but we do have to trade time for money. All of us in the year of 2025. But Mark, thank you for taking the time to speak with us. It's been an enlightening conversation. We didn't get a chance to talk a lot about the Power Platform stuff that I had hoped to. Hopefully we can do that at some point in the future. I know you have a busy schedule. I'll reach out to you afterwards, and maybe we can try to keep it to Power Platform, but I don't know with us, this crew. But thank you for all that you do. Thank you for all that you do for the community and the podcast that you have. If anyone's looking to maybe get in contact with you to learn about some of the great things that you're doing, find more information about your podcast, find about your roadblocks in real life, and some of the other great things that you're working on, how would they do so?
So LinkedIn, best way to get me. You can't miss me, NZ365 guy. In fact, if you just type that into any LLM or search engine or whatever you want, all roads point to Rome, as in they'll all point to me, NZ365 guy.
Excellent. And I love that sign. I've been waiting for a sign just like that for years. I'm going to have to get one, Kris. We'll have to make it.
I shared one with you. Remember?
I know. I just have to order it. I really appreciate the background.
Yeah. That's it. You got a spot for it. You both got spots for that.
Absolutely. I'll put somewhere. But thank you again for your time. We appreciate it. Look forward to speak with you again soon. Ciao, ciao.
Take care, Mark.
Ciao, ciao.
Thank you, Kris, for your time for another episode of In the Dynamics Corner Chair. And thank you to our guests for participating.
Thank you, Brad, for your time. It is a wonderful episode of Dynamics Corner Chair. I would also like to thank our guests for joining us. Thank you for all of our listeners tuning in as well. You can find Brad at developerlife.com. That is DVLPRLIFE.com. And you can interact with them via Twitter, DVLPRLIFE. You can also find me at matalino.io, MATALINO.io. And my Twitter handle is matalino16. And you can see those links down below in the show notes. Again, thank you, everyone. Thank you, and take care.